So I think a lot of the things people look at though is everybody wants to make money, everybody wants to do all these cool things, but they don't want to lose. And the fear of losing, it's a real fear. Like it happens. And so I love when you have your 10 commandments and you have a bunch of them that, we'll talk obviously about the book and the stuff you have going on. But one of the biggest rules was don't lose money. And I feel like people, even if sometimes they screen the deal, they don't screen the person, or they screen the person, but they don't screen the deal, or they fall into the trap that I did when I first started, that I just wanted a deal to work so bad that I put blinders on and I ignored the advice of the people I paid to help me and the red flags that were there. So for people that are listening now that are maybe starting out going, well, hey man, I'd love to start, but I don't have money to lose. I can't really afford to lose. Talk a little bit about ways to screen a good investment or a good investor for your first couple of deals starting out.
Yeah, so there's a number of things I would say to that. One thing I would say is the goal is to not lose money. I can tell you with full transparency and full certainty that I have learned more losing money than making money. So to a certain degree, the pain is so bad when you lose money, you're forced to learn the lesson. And so the goal, of course, is not to lose money, but I also think that the best lessons are going to be learned when you do lose money. And all investors are going to lose at some point in time. And so you just have to realize that. And I also think that you're probably not going to learn to the level that you can until you're actually in the game. So if you're always on the sidelines, it's hard to learn because you're not getting the reps of actually being an investor with the investor updates, with analyzing, the details and understanding the mechanics. So that's part of it. The other part though is how do we minimize? So how can I learn from you and how can I learn from other people the mistakes they've made so I can make less mistakes? I can lose less money. I can do less dumb deals because I've done my fair share, and that was part of my education. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I have lost a good amount of money in early days of investing. And by the way, I'm probably not out of the woods yet. I'm sure there are going to be deals that don't go well. And there was something else that I overlooked. But, track record wise now, I get way more right than I get wrong. And it's because I put in that time. And then I also think let's close the funnel. So most people have this, they don't have deal flow. They don't know how to evaluate a deal. So it's like anything that comes in the funnel, it's like, ooh, this is a good deal. No, change the mindset. Start instead of the eternal optimist of anything's a good deal, actually start from the standpoint of, no, this is actually a bad deal. Most deals are bad deals. This one is likely a bad deal. And I'm going to consider it a bad deal unless I can prove otherwise. Whereas most people go into it and say, hey, this is a good deal. Let me see if there's any reasons why I wouldn't invest, right? So it's like that one shift from going from a yes to a no right out of the gates is going to limit the number of deals you're in, which means it's going to limit your exposure, the risk of doing a bad deal. And then I think you just want to find trusted sponsors that have a great track record. So, depending on the time, the economy is different. It's always shifting. There are different asset classes that are strong at different times. So I did very well in the single family home rental space post the global financial crisis, GFC, because that was a really hot market. And that's when institutional investors started getting in. But that shifted, and today single family rentals are nowhere close to what they were then. And flips are nowhere close to what they were then. We had kind of like a 10-year stint or close to a 10-year stint also where multifamily was killing it, right? And you could get these incredible returns. Today, multifamily is tougher to make money in. It's harder to find deals than what it's been, the past decade. I think mobile home parks are still a great place and they're still an outlier because they're the least consolidated real estate asset class. And that's why I've done a lot in that space. And then industrial has done very well. So those are your two top performing real estate asset classes for the last, really close to a decade, even though most people probably think it's multifamily. And so I think you've got to pay attention to what's going on in the economy, what's going on with interest rates, what's going on with, where are the banks, how much exposure do they have? What type of deals can you get under a distressed scenario, right? So this is an opportunity right now that we're seeing deals today that 7 years ago we would never see, right? So there is opportunity. I just don't think it's as plentiful. And I think that banks are a lot more conservative on how they're going to lend and what papers Like, what do you have to do to get it done? Right. So all those factors really matter. But I think the more you say no, the more you find established groups, the more you find groups that have had deals go full cycle, find sponsors that have been through a downturn before, that have weathered it, that have learned some good lessons along the way, and are experts in, a single niche. To me, those are, ways that you can de-risk deals.